She sabotaged my cake, the one I spent 3 nights baking, then stood beside me smiling while everyone laughed. But what none of them expected was that a Michelin star chef would show up, taste it, and call it a masterpiece. Hey, I'm Jory. I wasn't even officially invited to that family reunion, but I brought dessert anyway. Turns out I also brought the truth. And trust me, nothing ruins a fake legacy faster than real flavor. Have you ever had someone ruin your work, then lie about it with a straight face? Or worse, have your own family treat your effort like a joke until someone else gives it value? Drop your story in the comments. I know I'm not the only one who's been iced out, just for daring to show up. Now let me tell you how one ruined cake unraveled everything they'd tried to keep hidden. So, who exactly made the cake you all just laughed at? The words hit the lawn like a glass dropped from a height. A hush spread faster than the laughter it silenced. I stood just outside the string-lit tent in my floral dress, hands still coated with flecks of lavender buttercream, heart beating a rhythm of regret. 2 weeks ago, I had sent a message in the family group chat. Would love to bring dessert this year? Maybe something light and summer-themed? No response. Days later, Neva posted a passive-aggressive update. Everything's covered. Just show up. And yet here I was, standing beside a 3-tier lavender vanilla cake I had poured 3 sleepless nights into. Ruined. When I arrived earlier that afternoon, I had tucked the cake safely into the venue's kitchenette, labeled clearly in purple ink, "Dessert, do not touch until 3 p.m. Neva greeted me with a hug that felt more like a formality and an air kiss that missed my cheek entirely. "Such a pretty cake," she said, barely glancing at the box. "You didn't need to go all out." I knew that tone. It was the same one she used at age 16, when she complimented my prom dress, then immediately whispered to Mom that I looked like I was trying too hard. When 3 p.m. came, I headed to the back to retrieve the cake. I opened the box and froze. One entire layer had been sliced through, jaggedly, like someone had tested a piece and decided against taking it. The decorations I'd hand-piped had been smeared by clumsy fingers. There was even a fingerprint in the side, literal, not metaphorical. My hand shook. Just a little. Enough to make the lid flap. I tried to close the box again, but my fingertips trembled against the cardboard. A deep breath didn't help. I was holding someone's sabotage and trying not to drop it. Then came the voice behind me. "Oh no," Neva gasped. "Did it collapse?" "Gosh, those layered ones are tricky, huh?" I said nothing. I just stared at her, then back at the cake. She looked directly at it, then shrugged. "No worries. We'll just say the kids got into it. Happens every year." And just like that, she walked off. The sound of her heels against the tile echoed like an exit cue. I followed her back into the yard, carrying what was left. I didn't have the heart to serve it, so I left it on the buffet table. No name tag, no flourish. Minutes later, I heard it. "Who brought this Pinterest fail?" Someone chuckled near the potato salad. A round of laughter followed. I didn't even look up. I stood there, arms crossed, eyes on the horizon, pretending I couldn't hear. Pretending my cake hadn't become a punchline. Pretending my chest didn't feel like it was caving in from the weight of being publicly invisible. Then the laughter stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. I turned. Chef André Villain, the Michelin star guest who Aunt Laurel had proudly said was technically family now, since he married into the Bakers from Louisiana, stood beside the cake with a fork in hand. He had just taken a bite. The soft background music, some breezy acoustic guitar, faded as if someone had unplugged the speaker. A child dropped a plastic cup. It rolled once, stopped near the table leg. The only sound left was wind and waiting. Chef André looked around the group, eyebrows raised. "So, Who exactly made the cake you all just laughed at? Silence. No one answered. He turned back to the plate. Because this isn't just dessert. It's a damn architectural symphony. There were audible exhales. Someone gasped. I stood still, unsure whether to shrink or step forward. Neva, ever the actress, chirped, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that good. We thought, well, she'd never baked for us before." I opened my mouth before my fear could stop me. Because you never let me. Heads turned. It wasn't a scream. It was a fact. Chef Andre looked from me to her. Wait, you made this? I nodded. He extended his hand. Then you're the only honest flavor on this table. The air crackled. Neva's face flushed, and for once she had no rehearsed reply. Somewhere near the drink station, a little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, not quietly enough. "Why does everyone hate that lady with the cake?" Her mom stiffened, then turned her away. Across the lawn, my mother shifted behind her sunglasses but said nothing. And then, near the hedge, I caught Neva murmuring to her, "We can't let her become the center again." Her words hit harder than the laughter. I stood a little straighter. I walked away slowly, not out of pride, but preservation. I needed air. I needed space. And I needed to see if the backup box, the extra cake, had also been accidentally damaged. In the small fridge inside, I found it. Same smear, same fingerprint, same deliberate violation. I held the box tight. My thumb pressed into the cardboard, right over the dent someone else had left. You didn't just ruin dessert, Neva. You declared war. Funny how I only ever get the group texts when it's time to clean up. The thought slipped through my head like a splinter as I scrolled through my phone, seated at the kitchen table with a cooling cup of coffee beside me. 1 week before the family reunion, and the group chat, so vibrant for everyone else, was eerily quiet on my end. No update, no confirmation, not even a forced "can't wait" that usually buzzed in with exclamation points and fake emojis. I tapped on the thread. Last message I'd sent, just checking on the date and time for the reunion. Should I bring dessert again? Read. Seen by Neva. Seen by Mom. No reply. I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear. Then nothing. 20 minutes later, Neva posted a photo to her story. A neatly arranged pile of gold-foiled invitations, tied with satin ribbon and lined up like luxury wedding stationery. The caption read, "Only the ones who matter get the golden touch." I zoomed in. 5 names were visible. None were mine. The kitchen went quiet around me. Even the clock on the stove seemed to hesitate between ticks. I texted Mom. Me. "Hey, do you know if the invites went out?" No answer. I called. Voicemail. The next morning, a message lit up from Aunt Laurel. Laurel. "Hey, sweetheart, just checking. You driving up next weekend or staying close by?" Next weekend, I whispered aloud. So that was the date. Me. I didn't get an invite. She took longer than usual to respond. Laurel. "Oh, that's weird." Then, another message. Laurel. "It's at Hollowstone Grove, 2 p.m. Please don't mention I told you." The screen blurred for a second. I hadn't cried. Not yet. But the betrayal pressed against my ribs like a hand trying to squeeze my heart still. Have you ever realized you weren't just forgotten? You were deliberately left out? That aching silence from your own blood that says, "You don't belong here"? If you've ever felt that quiet kind of heartbreak, drop a comment number 7 below. Now let's see what happens when someone finally decides to show up anyway. That evening, Callan found me in the hallway, standing still with my phone in hand. "You okay?" he asked. I told him everything. The silence, the invite, the caption. My voice didn't shake. My eyes didn't water. I'd gone somewhere quieter than pain. He didn't say much, just nodded once, stepped away. The next morning, on the dining table was a flat cream envelope with a wax seal pressed gently closed. Inside, a replica of the gold-foiled invite. The calligraphy read, "Miss Jory Halden, always welcome." And on the back, in Callan's messy handwriting, "Even invisible guests deserve to be stunning." That's when I cried. Not out of sorrow, but because I realized someone still saw me, fully, without needing a family tree to do it. On the day of the reunion, the sun fell through the blinds like champagne. I stood at my mirror, not fixing flaws, just setting intention. A soft blue dress, the one with the square neckline and low pockets. Gold earrings from a street vendor in Asheville. Hair half up, simple. And I brought a new cake. Lemon rosemary, whipped mascarpone cream, sugared thyme on top. My own legacy, baked in silence. The Hollowstone Grove estate glimmered in late afternoon light, all manicured hedges and artificial hospitality. As I approached, the check-in attendant glanced up. "You must be with catering?" I stared, then smiled. "Number I'm family." Inside, it looked like a catalog spread. Crystal drink dispensers, linen-draped tables, framed Halden heritage signs. A banner fluttered under perfect string lights. Classical music played softly beneath the chatter. I didn't have a place card, obviously. I found the dessert table and set my cake down beside the monogrammed cupcakes and store-bought tiramisu. From across the tent, Neva spotted me. She stiffened, recovered, then walked over with practiced grace. "Oh," she said, saccharine smile on. "You came." "I heard desserts needed rescuing," I said, adjusting the base of the stand. "Well," she sniffed, "we weren't sure you'd gotten the memo." "I didn't," I replied evenly, but Aunt Laurel believed I should be here. Behind her calm, her eyes flashed. A twitch at the jaw, barely visible, told me enough. A breeze lifted the hem of my dress. A flicker of wind carried a child's laughter nearby. Then a tug at my skirt. I turned. A little girl, maybe 6, looked up at me with wide eyes. "Are you the cake lady?" she asked. I smiled. "I guess I am." She hesitated. "My mom said you weren't invited, but you came anyway." "Why?" The music faded behind us. Sunlight dappled her hair. "Because," I said gently, "sometimes the people who bake the cake aren't the ones they remember. And that's not okay." She nodded seriously, then ran off, arms swinging. I stood there a second longer, watching the way her footsteps bounced. Then I turned back to the cake and froze. The bottom tier sagged slightly. I leaned in. A thin, jagged cut, not from the serving knife I brought. A clean violation. The frosting had been smeared with careless fingers. The slice had been taken from the back, hidden if you didn't know where to look. Sabotaged. Again. I looked around. A silver knife lay on a side table nearby, cream clinging to its edge. A fly buzzed, then settled. My hands curled slowly at my sides. Behind me, the air shifted. "Careful, Jory," Neva's voice whispered, too sweet. Wouldn't want to overreact again. I turned, slowly, deliberately. I let my silence grow long enough for the air to tighten. Then said quietly, "Careful, Neva. Wouldn't want to underestimate me again." A beam of sunlight hit my shoulder as I turned back to the cake. Somewhere, the wind knocked a place card to the grass. No one rushed to pick it up. "You didn't just blame me for the mess. You made sure no one questioned it." The morning after the reunion, I woke up to a message from my cousin Tabitha. A photo of the buffet table, with my cake sitting off to the side. Lopsided, incomplete, no sign of the slice that had gone missing. Underneath the photo, her text read, "Is it true you messed up the cake?" Neva said it collapsed before it even hit the table. Collapsed? I stared at the screen. My fingers clenched so hard my phone case creaked. I had carried that cake myself. I had set it down gently. The slice hadn't fallen, it had been taken. Now Neva was rewriting history, and no one questioned her version. No one but me. Later that day, I got a call from Mom. That alone was rare enough to trigger alarm bells. I picked up, already bracing. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. Her voice was syrupy, forced. "Just wanted to say, I heard about the cake incident. Must have been stressful. Are you okay?" "Stressful," I repeated. "It was sabotaged." There was a pause. "Well," she said, lowering her voice like we were being recorded. "Neva mentioned that you were already a bit emotional. I'm sure no one meant any harm." There it was. I said nothing. Silence had become my scalpel. Sharp, patient, surgical. "I mean," she continued, "you've always been so sensitive about dessert stuff. Maybe next time." "I'm done talking about the cake," I cut in. "Let's talk about how I'm being blamed for something I didn't do. You're blowing this out of proportion." Click. I didn't slam the phone. I just stared at the wall for a long time, trying to understand how it was always so easy for them to turn me into the problem. I needed proof. I needed more than memories and crumbs. So that night, I returned to the venue. Hollowstone Grove hosted events every weekend, but the kitchen staff was still rotating out when I got there. I wore the same dress I had at the reunion, maybe to stir recognition, maybe to test myself. Inside the small catering kitchen, I found Deacon, one of the teenage assistants I vaguely remembered from the party. He was sweeping, earbuds in, until I waved. He pulled one earbud out. "Hey, you were the cake lady, right?" I smiled. "That's me. Quick question. Do you guys have cameras in here?" He tilted his head. "Yeah, security cam on that shelf. Mostly to make sure the rentals don't get taken." "Does it record?" "Footage gets dumped every 48 hours unless someone saves it." I exhaled. Slow, controlled. "Would you mind checking? There was an incident involving my cake. Someone may have tampered with it." Deacon shrugged. "If it's still there, sure." 10 minutes later, we were hunched over the dusty office monitor. He found the footage quickly. Around 2:41 p.m., reunion day. There it was. Neva, stepping into the kitchen, looking around. She opened the cake box, took out a long serving knife from the drawer, and with perfect calm, sliced the bottom tier just enough to tilt it, then wiped the blade on a napkin, closed the lid, and walked out. My breath left my lungs like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. Deacon sat back. Damn. I stared at the screen. She didn't even look rushed. There was no hesitation, no panic. Just execution. "Can I have a copy of that?" I asked quietly. "Sure. You want it on USB or email?" "Email." As the footage uploaded, Deacon looked over at me. I didn't know whose cake that was. But after Chef Andre made that speech, we were all talking about it in the back. "What were you saying?" "That it's always the quiet ones who carry the truth." He smiled. I didn't. Back home, I waited for the email. When it came, I downloaded it immediately and made 3 backup copies. I didn't know yet what I'd do with it, but I knew one thing. I wasn't staying quiet. The opportunity arrived faster than I expected. The next family dinner, not a reunion, just a casual cousin catch-up, was hosted at Uncle Warren's house. About 20 people. Nothing formal, no photographers, no press. Just enough bodies for a confrontation to sting. I showed up late on purpose. Let them all settle first. When I walked in, heads turned. A few polite nods. A few guilty eyes. Neva was in the living room, perched on an ottoman like she owned the air. She looked up, blinked once, and smiled like we were still playing roles. I didn't greet her. Instead, I walked to the TV, plugged in the USB I'd brought, and turned up the volume. The footage played. Silence. Aunt Sharon dropped her fork. Neva stood slowly, hand frozen mid-air like she couldn't decide between stopping me and pretending this wasn't happening. On the screen, her hand slicing the cake. On the screen, her fake gasp in the kitchen. On the screen, her lie, playing itself out. When the video ended, no one clapped. No one moved. Neva's face had gone pale. "This isn't," she started. I cut her off. "You didn't just blame me. You engineered the story so no one would question you." She opened her mouth again, but no words came. Then, from the corner, someone muttered, "Jesus, Neva." Someone else got up and left the room. I didn't stay to bask. I didn't need their shame. I left the USB on the coffee table and walked out into the dark. Outside, the air was cool. The night felt honest. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't begged. I hadn't needed their permission to show the truth. And for the first time, I didn't feel erased. I felt seen. You borrowed my name, my credit, and my silence, but now I'm collecting. I didn't go looking for more. I thought the video would be enough, that the damage to Neva's image, the stunned faces around that living room, the quiet judgment bleeding into the next few days would satisfy something in me. But it didn't. Not fully. Because as the silence settled, something else started to hum beneath it. Something older. The bakery. Sweet Legacy. It had always been Neva's passion project, or so she claimed at every brunch, baby shower, and LinkedIn update. I'd never questioned where she got the funding. Not really. Not when I was too busy scraping together side gigs to pay my own rent. Not when I was being told again and again that my lane wasn't in entrepreneurship, that I was too careful to build something risky. But that name? Legacy. That word hadn't sat right with me in years. Until one evening when Callan came home, dropped his keys in the bowl, and said, "Have you ever actually seen the bakery's business registration?" I blinked. "Why would I?" He shrugged. "Because you might want to." Within 24 hours, Darla, a friend of Callan's from law school and now a finance compliance consultant, had pulled the paperwork. There it was. Sweet Legacy, LLC, principal owner, Neva Halden. Registered address, our old family home. Business loan co-signed under my name. I stared at the printout like it was written in another language. "It's not possible," I whispered. Darla slid another document across the table. Application for small business startup funding. Primary applicant, Neva Halden. Secondary signer, Jory Halden. But I never signed anything. Darla explained calmly. "It's an e-sign submission. If she had access to your personal info, birth date, old email, partial SSN, it wouldn't be hard to bypass a soft verification." A slow chill crept over me. "So I helped her launch her business? Legally?" Darla nodded. "Yes. On paper, you're responsible for 49% of the startup liability." I sat very still. It wasn't just about the cake, or the photos, or the empty chair at my wedding. This was theft, wrapped in a sister's smile and baked into a business model. "Can anything be done?" Darla looked at me seriously. "Do you want a war?" "No," I said. Then I paused. "I want the truth. Publicly." That weekend, Neva was scheduled to host a local PR shoot, a founder spotlight piece on women-led businesses in the area. The shoot was at Sweet Legacy, of course. There would be cameras, journalists, a small curated crowd. I put on a soft gray dress. I brought a copy of every document, and I brought Darla. When we arrived, the store was already buzzing with polite laughter and vanilla-scented air. Neva stood behind the counter in a custom apron, gold logo stitched across her chest. She was mid-sentence when she saw me. The smile faltered. For just a beat. But she recovered quickly. "Jory!" she chirped. "Didn't expect you to come support me today?" I replied evenly. "I didn't come to support. I came to clarify." She blinked. Darla stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. "We'd like to speak to whoever is leading the media segment." One of the journalists looked up from her notes. I stepped beside Darla and placed the folder on the counter. It made a crisp sound. Intentional, sharp, like punctuation. "This bakery was launched with my information," I said, "without my consent." There was a silence. Neva let out a laugh, too high, too shaky. "Oh, come on. Jory's always had a flair for drama." I opened the folder. Loan agreements, registration filings, archived emails with IP traces, screenshots from emails that were never mine, but used my name. "This is identity misuse," Darla stated, "and intellectual property infringement." Neva's eyes darted toward the camera crew, whose lenses were still pointed but now unmoving. She lowered her voice. "Jory, we can talk about this later." I didn't budge. "We're talking about it now." The lead journalist stepped forward. "Do you have any proof that the recipes came from you?" I didn't need to speak. I reached into my bag and pulled out an old recipe book, spiral-bound, oil-stained, annotated in 3 different pens. I flipped to a page marked "Lemon Rosemary Base, Jory's Twist." The journalist took a photo. Another camera zoomed in. Behind me, Darla unfolded a notarized letter confirming the timeline and authorship. There wasn't shouting. No finger-pointing, just documentation. And recognition. But in that stillness, Neva collapsed anyway. Not physically. But her posture changed. Her eyes dulled. Her hands, always manicured, always poised, curled inward. She knew. Everyone in the room knew. She didn't say another word. I gathered the papers, handed out copies to the journalist and production assistant, and then looked her in the eye. "I don't want your business. I want my name off your debt, and I want the story to reflect the truth." Then I left. That night I got a Google alert. "Sister Showdown at Sweet Legacy. Who really built the brand?" The story was trending. And below it, Chef Andre had commented, "Tasted that lemon rosemary. Still dreaming about it. That's Jory's flavor profile. Don't let anyone rewrite brilliance." I sat on the couch, knees tucked under me, phone warm in my palm. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I felt restored. "You're not just rewriting history, Vera. You're forging it." The knock came on a Tuesday morning, crisp and too confident. I was still in pajamas, toast forgotten in the toaster, when I opened the door to find her standing there. Vera, my mother. A travel tote slung over one shoulder and 2 hard-shell suitcases behind her like punctuation marks. "Sweetheart," she said with a curated smile, "Crosby's place is tight this month. I figured I'd stay here for a bit." Just like that. No preamble. No request. Just arrival, with entitlement trailing behind her like expensive perfume. She walked in without waiting for a reply. By the time Callan came home from his quick store run, she was already seated at the kitchen table with her tea brewed and my photo frame in her hand. "I always loved this house," she said, not really to me. "I remember when I helped you get the loan. Smart decision." My throat tightened. Not from emotion, from memory. Because 5 years ago, I had begged her for help. I needed a co-signer. She'd said no, said she couldn't attach her name to something that might not last. Her words, cold, formal, calculated. And now she was claiming credit for my home, like it had always been hers. That night, I went into my filing cabinet and pulled out the proof. The original mortgage denial letter, her notarized refusal to co-sign. I left them on the counter in the morning. She barely glanced at them. "That was then," she said, slicing an apple. You turned out fine. Why dig up the past? Because you're standing in the proof of that past, I wanted to scream. Because this house is my sweat, my nights, my sacrifices. And now you're walking through it like you own the light fixtures. But I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. Later that day, my Aunt Laurel dropped by. She carried a manila envelope in her weathered hands and a face that said she wasn't sure if she was being brave or foolish. I thought you already knew, she whispered, pulling me aside. Inside the envelope were emails, a chain between Vera and a mortgage consultant. Subject line, loan extension discussion, Crosby property. And in black and white text, Vera had written, "We are leveraging my daughter's Denver home for documentation purposes. It's essentially my asset. I helped her acquire it." My fingers trembled. I wasn't reading suspicion. I was reading confession. That evening, Vera hummed in the kitchen as she rinsed dishes, like nothing had shifted. But I couldn't unsee the line she had drawn on paper and in her head, using my name as currency to fund Crosby's newest dream. She didn't raise me. She wrote me. That night, Callan came home and found me staring at the wall, holding the papers. "You don't have to let this continue," he said softly. "Not again." The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw something that finally broke the silence inside me, a typed list, folded perfectly in half, sitting in the center of the island like a commandment. It read, "Grocery refill, drive me to Dr. Leonard, laundry pickup, call the HOA about the roof," and at the bottom, "Please don't use your office while I rest. It creaks too loud." There was no smiley face, no, "if it's not too much." Just quiet assumption that she ran this house, like she always ran the narrative. Have you ever had someone walk into your life and act like they built the walls you bled for? That slow burn of being needed but never respected? If you've been there, comment number 9 below. Now let's see what happens when the truth finally takes the mic. I didn't say anything. She walked in, stirring her tea like nothing was off. "I figured we'd split things while I'm here," she said. "You've always been organized." I said nothing, because she didn't want help. She wanted ownership. That night, I opened the back folder again. Inside was the scanned mortgage rejection and the email she'd sent the bank, distancing herself from my risk. And now, somehow, she had rewritten it all into being her triumph. "You told the bank this house wasn't worth backing," I said quietly. She didn't look up from her tea. "Because no one challenges what I say," she replied, calm, assured. Until now. Callan froze behind her. I could feel his stare sharpen in the room. I didn't argue, because it wasn't about winning, it was about documenting. The next morning over breakfast, she cleared her throat. "I've been meaning to ask," she began. "Could you take over full-time care for Grandma? It'd look better if it came from you. You work from home anyway." I blinked. "She's in Arkansas." "Yes," Vera nodded. "But you don't have kids, and she trusts you." It wasn't even phrased as a favor. It was a role, already cast. I didn't laugh. I didn't yell. I looked her in the eye and said, "You didn't come to my wedding. You erased me from yours. And now you want me to clean up what's left of your mess?" She exhaled slowly, like I was a teenager throwing a tantrum. "You always twist things, O'Dellin." "No," I said. I finally started untangling them. That evening, I walked out onto the porch, phone in hand, breath sharp in the crisp air. I stared at the walls of the home I built, brick by brick, with exhaustion and grace. This wasn't just a house, it was evidence. Evidence that I didn't need saving, that I was never the one lost. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the truth. And that made all the difference. Sometimes silence isn't peaceful, it's a punishment. And sometimes, you learn to fold your rage so small, it fits in your napkin drawer. That Sunday afternoon was unusually quiet. Vera had gone to her usual church friends' gathering, leaving her tea mug exactly where she always did, centered, like a claim. Callan had gone for a run. I stayed behind, not because I was tired, but because I had something to finish. On the kitchen table sat the last piece of the truth. My phone, face down. Not because I was ignoring it, but because I already knew what it held. A week earlier, Aunt Laurel had sent me a voicemail. She had labeled it, "In case you ever stop giving them the benefit of the doubt." I had saved it. I hadn't dared press play. Until now. I tapped it open and let it play on speaker. Vera's voice poured through the speaker, casual and clipped, speaking to someone off tape. "You know Odell was just a bump in our family story," she said. "Crosby's the legacy." Zenaya chimed in, with the softness of sugar knives. "She was a mistake we tried to raise right. It didn't take." Crosby didn't say anything, but silence is rarely neutral. His quiet wasn't shock. It was agreement. I let the recording finish. Then I played it again. This time, I didn't flinch. I just let the truth settle. That afternoon, Vera came home with a bakery box and a fake glow on her face. She set it on the counter. I picked up scones. Thought we could have a nice family tea. I didn't answer. I walked past her, grabbed my phone, and texted Callan. "It's time." He replied with a simple, "I'm ready." We'd already done the hard part, building the folders, archiving the lies. All that remained was the moment. Aunt Beth's potluck was that evening. I hadn't attended one in years, but this time I said yes. I didn't dress for war. I wore jeans and a black sweater. Simple, steady. I carried no evidence in my hands. The truth was in my pocket, in my phone, and in my spine. The room buzzed with soft chit-chat and the smell of baked ziti. Vera was at the counter handing out cookies like blessings. "It's so nice to be with people who still value togetherness," she said loudly. I walked past her and set my purse on the table. Then I pulled out my phone and placed it in the center. Callan met my eyes. I nodded. He tapped play. Vera's voice filled the room, clear, unapologetic. Zenaya's words followed, and then the stillness. When it ended, no one moved. Vera's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "This isn't how we handle things in this family," she finally whispered. "You're right," I said. "That's why I'm not doing it your way anymore." No one applauded. No one needed to. A few cousins quietly stood and walked out. Aunt Beth wiped at her eyes and said softly, "Maybe we all needed to hear it." I left my phone on the table face up. I didn't look back. The next day, Vera posted on Facebook. A photo of my house, cropped perfectly, with a caption that read, "Still proud to guide this family legacy from the home we built." No mention of me, no trace of my name, just glossy nostalgia. But this time, I didn't let it sit. That evening was the HOA meeting. I walked into the room and waited until the floor opened for comments. Then I stood. "There seems to be confusion about ownership of 2429 Glenview Way," I said. "This home was purchased with my credit, my career, and my funds. Vera Lewis is not listed on the deed or any legal document." Gasps weren't necessary. The board sat silent. I continued. "For anyone unsure, here are the mortgage approvals, tax records, and a notarized rejection of co-signing, submitted by her 5 years ago." I passed out copies. There were no objections, only the sound of shifting weight. Later that week, I posted 3 images to the neighborhood forum, the Facebook post, my deed, and a video clip of the tribute from my wedding, the one Neva had sabotaged. The comments came fast. "That video broke me. I donated to Crosby's startup because Vera said your house backed it." I always wondered why you were the only one weeding the yard. One message stuck with me. It came from a woman who used to teach Sunday school when I was 7. She wrote, "I didn't know. But I should have. The way you carried yourself that day? That was real grace." For the first time in years, I didn't question if I mattered. I knew I did. Weeks passed. One Saturday, I hosted brunch for Callan's family. His sister brought her kids. While I was setting the table, her daughter, maybe 7, stopped and stared at the napkin I had just folded into a small, perfect leaf. "That's pretty," she said. "Who taught you that?" I hesitated. "No one who stayed," I said gently. "But someone who taught me what leaving looks like." She didn't understand. She didn't need to. She smiled and ran off toward the orange juice. That night, I sat with my journal and didn't try to write a perfect ending. Just the truth. My mother didn't just skip my wedding. She skipped showing up for the woman I became. And I no longer measure love by applause or legacy. I measure it by who shows up when no one's watching, who brings your trash bin in, who folds beside you without asking why. Sometimes the family you build is the one you finally get to choose, and sometimes healing doesn't come from their apology, it comes from your clarity. Today, I live in the very house I once had to defend with documents and the silence they mistook for surrender. No one overwrites my voice anymore. No one takes credit for my effort and walks away unseen. At last, I reclaimed what they always tried to take from me: the right to own my story. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it comes from no longer asking for permission to exist. Dignity is not up for negotiation, and the truth, once brought to light, will always find a way to speak. Maybe late, but never too late. Those who build their lives on lies will eventually crumble beneath the weight of their own fiction. Have you ever been written out of your own life just so someone else could protect their image? Have you ever stayed silent because you thought that was love? Share your story in the comments below, because my story might be the voice you've been waiting for, and your story might be the light someone else needs. And if you want to see what happens when the daughter they called not enough rises to rewrite every chapter of her life, stick around. Because in this life, those who live in truth always get the final word.